Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, and welcome to How to Scale Yourself While Scaling Your Company. My name is Colin Mahan, and I'm a program manager at the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center. For those of you who may not know, the center is a nonprofit dedicated to enabling entrepreneurs from all over the world to realize their maximum potentials and grow. As you may have just seen in the chat, the NASDAQ Center, along with our partner Mentor Cloud, launched a free mentor matching platform for entrepreneurs called Mentor Makers. You can create your own advisory board to guide and inspire you with in-the-moment mentorship from topic experts and professionals dedicated to providing exceptional mentorship to entrepreneurs across all races, industries, and geographies. Find or become a mentor today by using the link in the chat. As we know, mentorship matters to all entrepreneurs. Their success is dependent on it. Quick housekeeping item, we're going to open up for live Q&A at the end of the event, so please submit your questions in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen throughout the presentation. We'll try to get to them all. Now, none of what we do here could be possible without all the amazing support from our sponsors, including NASDAQ, Lehigh University, Bank of the West, KPMG, Wilson Sonsini, Woodruff Sawyer, BPM, and NZTE. We're humbled by their contributions. During these still somewhat unique times, we're curious on how sentiment is among the entrepreneurs that we work with. So we're going to start by taking a quick poll to let us know how you're doing. First one is on your sentiment. How are you feeling with 2021? Halfway through Q3, here we are. How are you doing? Also, the second question, what's keeping you up at night? Second question helps us understand the responsive programming that we should be offering you, the entrepreneurs in our community. So I'm going to keep this open for another couple seconds ago because I don't want to waste a minute. There's so much to go through today, but appreciate all of you submitting your responses. So I'm going to end this poll. I'm going to share these results. Looks like optimism's at the top of the key, but totally understand that there's still some anxiety and just survival mode out there. And finance is at the top, but with a good mix of sales, marketing, and scale. Scale is the one that we're going to be hopefully helping you all with today. So without any further delay, please join me in giving a warm welcome to our special guest in the chat, Connor Drake. He's a senior coach at Mindmaven, where he helps leaders master the superpowers of leverage, intent, and fellowship to free up 8+ hours a week and invest that time into things that move the needle the most and leverage better relationships. Connor, welcome.
Colin, thank you. I do not want to have to follow an intro like that. That was, I think you should be giving this presentation, not me, but I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, I know that everyone's in for a treat because I personally have experienced some of this training. So over to you and good luck. Enjoy, everybody.
All right. Without further ado, guys, I'm going to share my screen, make sure everyone can see it, and then we're going to dive in. In the meantime, just to reiterate something Colin said here, any questions you have, feel free to drop them into the Q&A. I'm here to make this as relevant and meaningful to all of you as possible. Usually when we do this, we do it for smaller groups of people, groups of 5 to 7, so people can just jump in and ask questions and interrupt me. That's a little bit harder with a larger group like this, so please leverage that Q&A. I'm going to do my best to make sure I get through all of the content I have today in a way that leaves time at the end for Q&A. But if you ask a question and I don't get to it by the end, I'm going to find some way to follow up with you, make sure that you get the answers to whatever questions you may have. So without further ado, I have about 4 hours of content I'm going to try and do in 40 minutes. So bear with me if it goes fast. And we'll hopefully by the end, you're going to walk away here with some actionable ideas and strategies you can put into place. So to kick things off, I want to walk you through some of the scenarios that a lot of our founders, some of the challenges, a lot of the founders that we work with face. And I want to know if this resonates with you. Even if just one of them resonates with you, you're in the right place. So if you ever had a surprise 30 minutes show up on your calendar, maybe a meeting cancels, and rather than using that 30-minute block to really invest in something that's going to move the needle for your company, you dive into your email and you catch up on email. It happens to, frankly, almost everyone. Or if you spent Sunday or Monday deciding, okay, here's the high priority things I'm going to work on this week, the really important things. And then Friday of that same week rolls around and you realize you got so caught up in the weeds of just keeping yourself afloat that you kind of say, well, there's always next week to try. And this is probably the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 100th week in a row. You said, well, there's always next week to get to the things I keep putting off. Or Maybe you have what we call a field of shoulds, a long list of things that you know you should be doing, but you just can't find the time for because, again, they're important, but they're not urgent, right? And one of the big things that we're a big fan of that we're going to be talking about here soon is investing into relationships, leveraging your network, leveraging your team, and generating opportunities from that. And finally, my favorite one here is in the last 60 days, if you found yourself dropping basically everything to play the hero and come rescue your team, be the firefighter who comes in at the last minute and bails your team out and wins the big client or puts out the fire or whatever it may be. If you find yourself doing that, once or twice or more in a 30, 60-day period, there's probably something wrong because that is not scalable. And without further ado, let me talk quickly about what Mindmaven does here, and then we're going to get into the tactics. I'm an executive coach with an executive coaching firm focused primarily on the startup world, and we help leaders achieve what we call true greatness through relationships. And true greatness is a very subjective term. For everyone, it means something a little bit different. For some, it's building a legacy or becoming a unicorn company or just leaving the world a better place. Whatever that means to you, this concept of true greatness, we're there to help you do it by building and leveraging meaningful relationships. And you might be asking yourself, okay, that sounds good, but why relationships? And the fact of the matter is you don't know anyone who's reached the top, who's reached their biggest goals without help from others. We can't do it without others. There's a reason that founders build teams. You can't have a solo show. And I've probably said a line like that thousands of times over the course of my career with Mindmaven here. And I've yet to have anyone disagree with me. And yet, even though almost everyone can agree relationships are important, they are something we should be investing into, we continually neglect them, or at the very least, underinvest in them. And the reason for that is very, very simple, and I've kind of touched on it a little bit already. Relationships are just one of those things that are incredibly important, but almost never urgent. Or at the very least, by the time relationships are urgent, it's too late. You haven't been investing in them over a period of time, and by the time you need those relationships, you can't activate them because it's been 2 years since you've reached out to so-and-so, even though you really need to reach out to them, right? So really what we have to do, and what I'm going to hopefully give you here in this talk today, is some strategies that you can put into place to make sure that you can win this urgency versus importance battle. And while you can't eliminate urgency, you can at least make sure that more of your time, more of your attention are focused on those important things that are going to move the needle more for you and for your company. And there's two ways you can do this, and there's only two ways you can do this. You can choose to use the time that you have smarter. In other words, become more intentional with it. If you have these 30-minute blocks that show up on your calendar from time to time, don't use it for email. Use it for the things that are really going to make a difference. So that's option number one. Be intentional how you use your time. Option number two is freeing up time. We're big fans of changing the way people work with an EA or a chief of staff. And if we can do that, we can easily almost guarantee that we can free up 8 to 10 hours a week of your time. Now, I know a lot of you are not at the point quite yet where an EA or a chief of staff is a reasonable investment. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time on that today. But if that is something that's interesting to you, feel free to just drop something in the chat, either, hey, I already work with an EA, or I could realistically consider getting one in the next 6 months or so. And if that's the case, maybe we can follow up with some extra information around some things you should be thinking about. I will touch on it later, but just very, very briefly, because I want to make sure this is relevant to everyone who's here today. Without further ado, let's dive into intent. And this is using your time smarter. And the first thing that we need to do here is have a little talk about the term productivity. Now, there's kind of two ways to look at productivity. When most people talk about it, it's really just getting stuff done, getting a lot of things done over the course of the day. And while that can feel good, the idea that you maybe got 50 things off your to-do list done over the course of the day, it's not necessarily productive. We at Mindmaven define productivity as getting those things done that get you the results you want. In other words, it's better to focus on one thing that is really going to move the needle for your company than it is to get 50 other kind of tangentially related things done. So how do you actually use this information? Well, let me give you a couple of tips around the whole idea of intent here. And the idea is that you should be able to walk away and start implementing some of these, ideally right after this call. So the first one is what we call now and next. And this is almost laughably simple, so bear with me here. But the idea behind this concept is built on the idea that the brain, your brain, our brain, are single attention processors. In other words, the idea of multitasking, being able to do multiple things at once, is a myth. And people who are quote unquote good multitaskers are really just good at rapidly switching back and forth. But every time you switch between tasks, every time you go from managing a team to being an independent contributor to the team, there's a switching cost and your productivity drops. So we want to make sure that is if we know what you need to work on next, if you always know the one thing you need to work on next, and that one thing is the single most important thing, it goes without saying that you're going to be operating at, or at least very, very near your most productive self. But the problem is a lot of people try and keep track of tasks and to-dos in their head, and it's very hard to prioritize in your head. Or even worse, people try and use their inbox as their task management tool. And so they flag emails, they star emails, whatever, and they use that to say, okay, here's the things I need to get done today. The inbox is a communication tool, not a task management tool. So you need something outside of your own head, outside of your inbox, to manage and prioritize yourself on a day-to-day basis. And I imagine many of you out there have used some form of task management tool before. And there's so many of them out there, from Asana to Trello to Monday. And the tool itself doesn't really matter. The reason why most people, frankly, fail at task management is because they get a to-do list that looks something like what you can see on the right side of the screen now. You've got this massive, massive list of hundreds of tasks. And the moment your brain looks at that list, it's overwhelmed to begin with. And it just says, you know what, there's no way I can do this. I'm overwhelmed. Let's go to where it's easy. And where it's easy is usually the inbox. And the inbox is just full of people telling you how they think you should use your time. And unfortunately, their priorities are often not aligned with your priorities for the company. So what we want is a tool that looks a little bit more something like this. See if I can pull up a screenshot here. This is a screenshot of Asana. I'm not affiliated with Asana in any way. It's just a tool I'm a big fan of. I and collectively the team at Mindmaven, we've tried out virtually everything on the market. Asana is hands down one of the best ones out there. But again, don't get caught up on the tool. It's more about the tools and the workflows that go into the tool, the processes behind the scenes that are really going to make the difference. And one thing you'll notice here, if you look at this screenshot of Asana, there's two kind of sections here that are very important. One are top priorities. These are things that you're not going to check off on a day-to-day basis. These are your top 3 to 5 things that you need to get done this quarter, this year, whatever time frame you want to use. These are the things that you need to be focusing on every single day to really drive success for your company. And then underneath that, we have now and next. These are the things you're getting done on a daily basis. So here's the things you need to get done today. And anything that's on your today list that you want to get done within the next 24 hours should in some way, shape, or form be related to at least one of the 3 items on this list of top priorities. And if it's not, if you have a task that you need to get done today that does not contribute to one of your top 3 to 5 priorities, that should be a red flag. It should cause you to pause and ask yourself, should I really be working on this? Or is it something I should delegate or maybe even eliminate altogether? The issue is a lot of people think they know their top priorities and they exist in their head, but they're not outside of your head. They're not something you see every single day. So whatever task management tool you use, whether it's Asana or Trello, or you can use pen and paper, please don't, but you could, as long as you have somewhere where you're seeing your top priorities every single day, you're always going to know what it is you should be focusing on, and you can align what you should be working on with that list. I hope that makes sense. Usually there's a little bit more here, but for the sake of time, I'm going to move on and talk about really one of my favorite aspects of intent. That's what we call the art of no. And it's built on this really kind of famous quote by Steve Jobs. Some of you may have heard before. He says, focus means saying no to 100 other good ideas. I'm actually as proud of the things that we haven't done as the things that we have done. Innovation means saying no to 1,000 things. In other words, as you continue to scale, as you continue to shift from founder to CEO, there are going to be more and more things demanding your attention, more and more opportunities you could pursue, more and more requests for your time. And every time you say yes to something, you are also saying no to dozens of other things, hundreds of other things. And so it's really important that you're saying yes to the right things and no to the right things. And in our experience, the interesting thing here is I think I can safely say this, most founders that we talk to know when they should be saying no. Now, they get that request from someone that says, hey, I'm a brand new entrepreneur and I'm trying to figure out how to start my first company, and your story really inspired me. Could I buy you a cup of coffee and sit down with you for an hour and pick your brain? You want to say yes, but you know you shouldn't, because it's not a quote unquote good use of your time. It doesn't drive success for the company. But because we don't know how to say no in a way that doesn't hurt relationships or feel negative, we end up saying yes because we don't want to spurn someone or hurt their feelings. And that's what we want to get around. So rather than teaching you when you should say no, which I really think a lot of you probably already do know this, It's more about learning how to say no in a way that makes you feel comfortable, so you're actually going to deliver it, and even better, delivers value to the person that you're turning down. So it's not just throwing up a brick wall in front of them and saying, no, I will not help you. And there's 3 tips I can give you here, and then I'm going to give you a very pragmatic example of how to use these. The first is positivity. No is in and of itself a negative experience. That's why we don't like it. We've all asked for something, been told no, and it doesn't feel good. So the first thing you can do is, as you deliver a no, deliver some sort of positive, genuine statement with it. If someone reaches out to you and asks for an hour of your time because they want to pick your brain, ask yourself, what do I appreciate about their outreach? Or maybe spend 30 seconds looking up them on LinkedIn or look up their company and just say, hey, I can't take this meeting right now, but I just wanted to say I really enjoyed that you XYZ, or I love that you're taking the initiative and reaching out to founders like me. I wish I could say yes, but I'm just not in a place to. Give them some sort of small positivity that helps balance out some of the negative that comes with a no. Number 2, rationale. So our brains are built to rationalize. I don't know if any of you have ever had that experience of going to bed. Maybe you're going to bed on a Monday night. You decide, tomorrow is the day that I'm finally going to start working out. I'm going to wake up at 6 a.m. I'm going to go for a run. I'm tired of feeling this way. I'm tired of looking this way, whatever. I am committing right here, right now. I'm making a change. And so you set your alarm for 6 a.m. and it goes off in the morning and your brain immediately starts rationalizing. You say, well, I've got a busy day. I've got a busy day today. I really don't have time, or I shouldn't be tired for my meetings today. Or you know what? I didn't sleep all that well, and I'm probably better off giving myself this extra hour of sleep than I am working out. The brain it does this, and it can be very frustrating, but you can also use this to your advantage. The brain does not need a strong rationalization to believe something. It just needs a rationalization. So if someone reaches out to you and asks for your time, rather than saying no to them, say no to the situation. Say no, I'm really focused on fundraising this quarter and trying not to take outside meetings. By giving someone a rationalization like that, you're no longer saying no to them as a person or their request as an individual request. You're saying no to a blanket of situations. No, I am not taking outside meetings. This has nothing to do with you. And that takes a lot of the sting out of it. Give them something that they can latch onto that doesn't feel like a personal rejection. And they're going to feel much, much better about it. And finally, you can try a focus shift. And when you say no to someone, or let me put it this way, when someone comes to you with a request, there's an inherent momentum to that. They're trying to move forward. And the word no can be like a brick wall that someone runs into. And that just doesn't feel good. So what you can do instead is redirect that momentum to something else. Something like, hey, I can't take this meeting right now. I'm heads down, provide rationale or combine rationale and focus, trying to take outside meetings this quarter. That said, I recently read a great blog post that answers some of the questions I think you have. You might want to check this out. Or, hey, I can't meet with you right now, but so-and-so probably can. Let me get you connected with them. And now you're giving them a new path to follow rather than just putting up a brick wall and having them lose all of their momentum, which again, just really doesn't feel good. Now, I promised you an example, and this is a very common situation that a lot of our clients run into. So I'm hoping this will be valuable for you. If not now, probably in the very near future for a lot of you as you begin to scale up and your company gains traction and your name gains a little bit more clout and renown. So the scenario here, and this is a real email that I'm going to pull up, is someone reaches out to you asking for your time. Someone high quality reaches out. And I won't read word for word, but the general idea is, hey, we haven't met. My name's Arjun. Followed your story for a long time, been a big inspiration for me. I know one of your board members, and I'm wondering if I could, buy you a cup of coffee, pick your brain for 30 minutes, 60 minutes, sometime in the next couple of weeks. It's one of those things that, founders want to say yes to. There's an inherent desire to help in almost every founder that we speak with, because that's why you start a company. You find a problem, you build a product to solve that problem. You like helping others, which can be a double-edged sword when you get requests like this. And because it feels uncomfortable to say no, a lot of people say yes to this. And when you just get 1 or 2 of these every couple of weeks, that's not a big deal. But you start getting 1 or 2 of these a week, you start saying yes to all of them. Every time you say yes to this, you're saying no to all the other things you could be using that 30 to 60 minutes for. So here's how you can combine positivity, rationale, focus shift, and a little bit of extra value to say no in a way that not only feels good for you, but provides value to Arjun. So here's what I'm going to do. We've got this email. Here's how you might write back. Hey, Arjun, I really appreciate you reaching out, and I'm so glad my story inspired you. That's a little bit of positivity right there. That said, I'm really heads down on recruiting this quarter and trying not to take outside meetings. There's your rationale. You're not saying no to Arjun specifically. You're saying no to just what's going on, any meetings. It's not just him. That said, we've got some focus shifting here. I recently wrote a blog post answering some of the most common questions I've gotten over the years. As you continue to grow as a founder, you're going to find yourself answering the same questions over and over again. Spending a little bit of time writing one blog post answering those questions can save you so much time in the long run. So I wrote this blog post. Figured you might want to take a look at it because it's probably going to answer the questions that you have. That said, this final part you really only want to use for high quality people. But if it isn't a relationship that you want to invest into, you could say something like, if you still have questions after reading this, send me your top 3. But please also include what you think the answers are based on your own perspective and research. That'll give me a little bit more context on where your head's at and allow me to provide better answers. Would you be willing to do that? I'm looking forward to hearing back. Cheers, Blake. Now, what do you think is going to happen when you send an email like this out? Now, usually I would pause here and actually ask someone to answer, but for the sake of time, I'm not going to do that here. 50%, if not more, people are never going to respond. They're going to get exactly what they needed from this email, from this blog post, and you won't hear from them again. But every once in a while, someone will respond. They will follow through on what you ask them to do. They're going to read this blog post. They're going to come up with their questions. They're going to do a little bit of research, and they're going to write back and say, here's what I have. Here's the questions I have. Here's what I think the answers are. And that is an indication of a high quality person. That is someone who's willing to take the time out, really do their own thinking. And at that point, it might be worth saying yes in a small way, rather than still saying yes to this 60-minute meeting they're asking for. Instead, look at their questions, open something like Loom, many of you might be familiar with. Use Loom to record a video of yourself answering their questions, or just use an audio recording tool of you talking through your answers to the questions, send that off to them. And that's going to take you maybe 5 minutes of your time. They're going to get what they wanted and more from this email exchange, and you saved yourself 55 minutes. Does that make sense? So there are so many ways that you can combine this idea of positivity, rationale, and focus shift to say no to any type of request that you may get. And I'd encourage you, if there's anything, whether it's a team member or people in your network or just complete strangers reaching out to you, asking for you to use your time in ways that are maybe that you want to do, but you shouldn't, start practicing some of these skills. And I think you're going to find it much easier to say no, and people are still going to get what they need from you. So you're going to continue investing goodwill into your relationships. All right, let's keep going for the sake of time. That's all I'm going to cover on intent, or the idea of using your time more effectively right now. I'm going to very briefly talk about this concept of leverage, because some of you may be at a state where either right now or in the very near future, it's realistic for you to be thinking about an EA, working with an EA or a chief of staff. So I want to give you a peek into how you should be thinking about this, since it is going to be on the horizon for some of you. So getting leverage is all about hiring that assistant and turning that assistant into what we call an engagement manager. Many of you probably have not heard that term before, because it is, I don't want to say we coined it, but we kind of coined it. And an engagement manager is kind of a cross between a highly skilled EA and a really intuitive chief of staff. And they're there to really do 2 things for you. First off, and most obvious, they're there to help you free up time. They're going to help you look at everything that you're currently doing and help you ask yourself, should I be the one doing this? Now, you should not be the one managing your calendar, managing your travel. You should not be the one even writing your own emails, which I'm going to talk about here in a moment. There are so many things that you are probably doing right now that in the early stages of a company, there's no one else that can do it. So yes, you are the best person to do it. But over time, and sooner than most people think, it becomes a hindrance for you to manage your own calendar, for you to do your own travel booking, for you to respond to your own emails, for you to be the one individually managing your relationships. It doesn't scale well. So having someone who can help you not only look at these things that you shouldn't be doing, but can also help you take them off your plate in a meaningful way, and frankly, do them even better than you could, the value of that is 10x, 100x, hands down. So they're there to help you do that. And then they're also there to help you build relationships in a very, very scalable way. So again, as you scale, if you hit, say, 30 team members, 50 team members, 100, 200, 300, it becomes very hard to individually manage those relationships with your team. If you have a network of hundreds or thousands of people, it becomes very hard to individually manage those relationships. And they're there to help you find those interaction opportunities and leverage them in a way that's going to help you scale and stay top of mind with the people that matter most. Now, I want to give you just one example of what this might look like that's a little bit counterintuitive, or something that people might not think about on their own. And then we're going to move on from this. I want to spend the rest of our time talking about relationships. So which route do we want to take here? Let's do email follow-ups. Follow-up emails are one of those things that almost everyone agrees are a good idea to send, but very few people actually do it consistently. We agree if I spend 30 to 60 minutes meeting with someone, it's probably a good idea to send them a follow-up email, but we often don't do that because writing a meaningful follow-up email, something that's longer than just, hey, Colin, it was great to meet you today. Really looking forward to talking further soon. Thanks, Connor. And emails like that add noise to someone's inbox, not value. A really meaningful one probably takes 10 to 15 minutes to write. And if we talk about a day of 6, 7, 8+ meetings, that 15 minutes adds up very, very, very quickly. And it can take up over an hour of your day. With an EM, you can reduce that to almost nothing. So the workflow that you'd have with an EM is you walk out of a meeting, you want to send a follow-up email. What you're going to do is grab your phone and open up a dictation app. And you're going to talk through a rough outline of a follow-up email. Something like, hey, Colin, it was great to meet you today. I really appreciated your insights around XYZ. I don't know if you know this, but I've really been struggling with this, and your thoughts provided a ton of value. And I just want to say thank you. Beyond that, here's some of the commitments I promised. I said I'd send the blog post on XYZ. You can find it here. I offered to introduce you to so-and-so. I'll do that in a separate email. You talk through the things that you promised to do and that they promised to do for you. And you spend maybe 90 seconds talking through this email. That is going to get shipped then automatically to your EM, engagement manager, in a task management tool. Usually we use Asana, but again, don't get caught up on specific tools. And they're going to listen to that and turn it into an email draft that reads like it's coming from you. It doesn't do any good to get an email that feels totally disconnected from the person they met in the meeting. It's going to read like it's coming from you, and it's of course going to read well. We don't tend to write the same way that we talk. So your EM is not there to transcribe your dictations. They're there to take the overall message that you communicated and turn it into an email that reads well. And they're going to place that in your drafts folder. So when you get to your inbox at the end of the day, after 8 back-to-back meetings, you've got 7 or 8 email drafts ready for you. All you have to do is go in there, read them. If needed, make a couple minor edits here and there where they might have missed the mark if it's early in the relationship, they're still learning your voice, and send it out. So what used to take 10 to 15 minutes per email, you can probably send out all 8 follow-up emails in that same time. 10, 15 minutes of your time, they're out, if not less. And that's an hour a day just right there in follow-up emails saved. So you can probably imagine that's just one of the 50+ things we teach around working with an EM. So we can free up 8 to 10 hours of your time easily when you're ready for that. Again, a lot of you aren't quite at that stage yet, and that's entirely fine. But the time to start thinking about hiring an EM is sooner than most people think. And there's many cases where hiring an EM can have a bigger impact and a higher ROI than, say, hiring another engineer or hiring a head of sales, because your EM is there not just to help you free up time, but to use that time well. They're there to help you generate opportunities, to help you interact with your team more so you retain talent, all of that. So I'm going to send out a companion email after this that has a little bit more information about this role of an EM and what you should be looking for in it and how the whole process works. If any of this is intriguing, I'd encourage you to check out that email. It'll give you more information and a little bit more context around when you should be thinking about hiring this person and how to do that. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and move on to what to do with this time. So we've talked about leverage, we've talked about intent. The next kind of natural question here is to ask yourself, okay, I freed up all of this time. I'm using my time, better. But what do I do with it? If I truly have, 5 to 10 hours extra a week, what do I invest that in? Because there is no net gain in you freeing up, say 30 minutes a day from your email or from your calendar if all you do is invest it into your email. There's no productivity gain there. So we want to make sure that the time that you free up is being used in a meaningful way. And there's really 2 things that I think you should be using this freed up time for. Number 1 is just frankly taking care of yourself. Founder burnout is a very, very real thing and a very, very painful thing that we have seen just time and time again. So whatever self-care looks like for you, whether that's carving some time out each week to meditate or each day to meditate, or spending some time reading and learning and growing, or just more time with your family, with your friends, whatever self-care looks like for you, use some of the time for that. Take care of yourself first. In other words, it's going to enable you to better serve your company, your network, all of that. And second, invest the remaining time into relationships, building relationships, leveraging relationships. Because as you continue to transition from founder to true CEO, your role really becomes about how you manage your relationships. And there's 2 types of relationships that as a CEO, you need to be able to manage very, very effectively. There's your team relationships. And by leveraging and managing your team relationships, really what you're doing is convincing top talent to join and follow you through hell and back. Startups have ups and downs. You're going to have challenges. You're going to have really, really scary times. And you need a talent that's not just going to flee at the first sign of trouble. And that doesn't come from having an amazing mission, or at least not just from having an amazing mission. People don't typically align with companies. They align with people. And you need people who know and believe in you as a leader, not just the mission of the company. So that's number one. Number two is what we call your tribe. And your tribe is your greater network. In other words, all of those around you who can send you opportunities. And when you leverage them appropriately, they can get you access to opportunities that you wouldn't otherwise have had access to. And there's a lot for early stage founders, a lot of things that would be nice to have that frankly you can't afford right now. Capital is very, very limited, and you can't just pay your way to solve every problem. But if you leverage your network and build the right relationships with the right people and consistently ask for them and educate your network on what it is that you're looking for, you can get access to things that other people would never even dream of getting access to at this stage of a company. So I'm going to focus primarily on tribe here today, largely because team starts to become relevant when you hit around that 30-person mark. And when you start hiring the first person that you never met, that's when you start to risk losing touch with your team, when you start to lose touch with your culture. And that's when team starts becoming really, really important. And not that you shouldn't be investing into your team relationships right now, but it becomes a little bit more urgent as your team grows. For now, I'm going to focus on tribe. But again, if team is something that you want to learn more about, if you are nearing that stage of 30 plus people, or even if you're at a smaller stage, but you feel like I'm just not naturally relationship oriented and I feel like I am losing touch with my team, then again, that companion email that I believe dropped into chat, thank you so much for that, has some resources on it. And if we have time at the end, I can spend some time talking about team fellowship. But the point I want to drive home here is that relationships are really one of the single biggest contributors to success. And to illustrate this, I want to share a story some of you may have heard before. It's a true story about the founder of a very, very well-known social gaming company. They were a really, really big deal some 5, 6, frankly, probably more years ago now. Their ads used to be all over TV. And when they founded the company, or when the company started to get traction, the CEO and one of the board members decided, you know what, one day we may want to sell this company. It's not a goal per se, but it's something we want to be open to. And so what they decided to do from practically day one is identify who potential acquirers were, and then start building relationships with those people. Not telling them, hey, we want you to buy our company, just who are these people? What do they care about? How can I build a relationship with them? And they did that for years with no clear outcome immediately. But then one day, some number of years later, out of the blue, they get an offer from someone totally different, offering to buy the company for $200 million. And upon getting that email, rather than just folding at that offer, which frankly it was a mind-blowing offer to them, they didn't expect that. They reached out to these people they've been building relationships with and said, hey, we just got this offer, any interest? And what they ended up doing is creating a bidding war. And over the course of 7 days, they were able to double the valuation of their startup from $200 million to $400 million. And someone from their network, someone that he'd been building a relationship with, ended up being the acquirer. In 7 days, they doubled the valuation of their company. And there is no way you can do that without relationships. No amount of engineering or hiring or org structures, it says on the slide. That's all important. And I don't want to knock any of that. You need all of that. But relationships are what create these exponential leaps in value. And really, at the end of the day, this exit, which is a crazy story, an inspiring story, but an exit like this is just one example. There's so many things that even if you never want to be acquired, your network can get you access to so many things. And we'll take a look at that here in a moment. In fact, just for the sake of time, I'm going to jump ahead here a little bit. And I think all of this is pretty self-explanatory. Your network is the one kind of unlimited asset you have as a leader. Your time is limited, capital is limited, but your network, your relationships are potentially infinite, unlimited, as long as you consistently build and invest into them. And they can provide you with things like, top talent is a big one. Because again, as you move away from being this independent contributor to the company to more of a traditional CEO, your ability to scale is all based on the people that you can hire and keep. So attracting top talent that you wouldn't otherwise get access to. They can send you clients and partnership opportunities, investors, acquirers, anything that you need more of comes from really either your budget or your network. And network is when you think of someone who's just ridiculously resource efficient, which is kind of a buzzword among the startup world. You want to be a resource efficient founder. What a resource efficient founder really is someone who knows how to systematically leverage their relationships to generate opportunities, to generate talent, to generate clients that they wouldn't otherwise have access to. Does that make sense? It's really when that happens, when the right person thinks of you at the right times and sends you the opportunity that you're looking for. We like to call that serendipity. And I guarantee that, we have, I don't have a view in front of me right now that shows me how many people, 80. We've got 80 people on the chat right now, it looks like. I would say 99% of you probably have some story of serendipity in your life, either your business or just your life, where the trajectory of your business, of your life changed in an instant because the right person thought of you at the right time. The issue is that a lot of people think that that's just chance. It either happens or it doesn't, and there's really nothing you can do to influence that. No surprise, we do not believe that here at Mindmaven. In fact, we would say as a founder, it is your job to drive serendipity. And what I want to do is give you a peek behind the curtains, because there is a process that takes place behind every referral. It is not a game of chance. It is not just luck whether or not someone thinks of you. There is something that is happening behind every single referral that gets sent your way or not sent your way. And the better you understand that, the better you can leverage it to create opportunities. So let's go. What drives referrals? Two factors. Factor number one is timing. Timing is the moment in time when someone in your network comes across the type of opportunity you want to hear about. In other words, they're at some sort of networking event and they meet this incredible engineer, and you just happen to be looking for an engineer hire. This engineer is looking for a career shift. That moment in time is, no surprise, timing. The problem with timing is that you have virtually no control over it. Short of picking someone up and placing them at a networking event, or forcing them to interact, which you can't do, obviously. There's nothing you can do to influence timing. That's the bad news. The good news is that there are probably more opportunities happening in your network right now than you could possibly process, even with all the resources in the world. You could have 20 engagement managers. There are still more opportunities happening in your network at any given point in time than you could possibly process. You're probably hearing about maybe 5% of them right now. And if we can double that, if we can go from 5% to 10%, that's again a doubling of the amount of opportunities you're hearing about, and that's huge. So we've got timing. Number two is maybe what's a little bit more important here, because you have full control over what we call Mindshare. And Mindshare is just how top of mind you are with people in your network. In other words, at that moment in time, when they come across an opportunity, something you want to hear about, how likely are they to think of you versus someone else in their network? And this is just, again, how top of mind you are, and that you have full control over. And let me illustrate how this often plays out in a lot of our lives with a, frankly, kind of painful experience I imagine many of us have encountered before. So let's say you meet with someone for the first time. You grab lunch with them. And as that meeting wraps up and you're both walking out the door going your separate ways, you essentially occupy full mindshare with this person. In other words, if on the way to their car, they meet someone who's looking for exactly what you're looking for, it's very, very likely that they're going to think of you. They're going to say, oh, you know what? Pause. I just met this amazing guy. I need to connect you with him. He's probably walking to his car right now. Let me run and grab him. Very likely that they are going to think of you. The issue is that's usually not how the real world works. What actually happens is you meet with them and then you let time pass, and a month goes by and 2 months goes by and 3 months and on and on and on. And that's when they encounter the opportunity that you want to hear about. The issue is, due to something called neuroplasticity, our brain is constantly rewiring itself. In other words, if you're not relevant, their brain is going to be physically incapable of thinking of you. And if they have not interacted with you in 6 months, you're not relevant, is the harsh reality. So the way this often plays out is, 6 months pass and you realize, oh, I forgot to follow up with Connor. I should reach out to him, see what's going on in his world. And you reach out to me, we sit down, we have another lunch together. And the first thing that I say is, God, I wish you reached out earlier. I had this perfect opportunity for you. And I feel awful. I can't believe I didn't think of you. And it's easy to be, frankly, it's easy to be mad at me. It's like, well, of course that's perfect. How could you not think of me? But at the end of the day, the only person you really have to blame is, frankly, is yourself. You allowed your mindshare decay to the point where someone was incapable of thinking of you. So here's what we want the graph to look like instead. This is how you ensure that you hear about more opportunities. So you have that lunch meeting, that continues, but then you send a follow-up email. And then maybe a couple of weeks later, you send an introduction. You use that first meeting to learn, what do they care about? What are some of their challenges? And a couple of weeks later, you say, hey, you mentioned you're really struggling with XYZ. I know this person who's solved that problem themselves. I just wanted to get the two of you connected. And then a couple of weeks after that, maybe you follow up and say, hey, did you ever get a chance to meet with them? How'd the conversation go? A couple of weeks after that, you send a book recommendation. Hey, you mentioned that you're really interested in productivity. I just read this great book called Getting Things Done by David Allen. Don't know if it's of any interest to you, but here's a link to it on Amazon. Thought you might want to check it out. It's these little things here and there scattered throughout the course of a relationship that keep you top of mind. You don't have to carve out an hour every single week to meet with them for lunch to increase your mind share. All it is interacting with them on a consistent basis in a meaningful way that's going to keep you top of mind. And while it won't guarantee you're going to hear about every interaction, every opportunity, you don't need to. Again, if we can go from 5 to 10%, that is a doubling of the opportunities you're hearing about. And that is, trust me, that is plenty. So how do we do that? We've talked a little bit now about this idea of opportunities, obviously driven by Mindshare. In fact, what I'm going to do for the sake of time here is skip over some of these animations. But opportunities driven by Mindshare. Mindshare, as I hinted at, is driven by interactions. In other words, how often do you deliver experiences to these people? And there's two factors that influence your interactions here. We've got frequency, or how often you interact, and then experience impact, or how meaningful, relevant, and valuable are the interactions you're delivering. And you can't really just focus on one. You could increase your frequency and send someone an email every single day, but if you've ever been on a spam list and gotten an email from the same company every single day or the same person every single day, it quickly becomes spam. You get tired of hearing about it because there's no experience impact. Email is not meaningful, relevant, or valuable to you. On the flip side, you can't just do experience impact and deliver one great experience to someone a year, because again, you're letting a year pass between interactions. So it needs to be a combination of the two. You need to interact more consistently with people, and you need to make sure that every interaction you deliver will be perceived as meaningful, relevant, and valuable. And that comes from just knowing what people care about. What are their professional challenges? What do they do on the weekends? And just knowing this basic information and capturing this information, which an EM can help you do, allows you to realize, hey, it's been 30 days since I reached out to Connor. I want to make sure I'm staying top of mind. What does he care about? Oh, he cares about productivity. What if he's heard about this tool called Asana? I'm going to send a quick email sharing that tool with him. You can do just minor things like that. And again, leverage an EM to really take a lot of the time and effort out of that. Then you can stay top of mind with the right people in your network at the right consistency, if you will. And you can ensure that you hear about dramatically more of the opportunities happening in your network at any given point in time. What I want to do here to kind of wrap up this part of the conversation, and then we can start switching over to Q&A, is just leave you with one almost ridiculously simple habit. And that's this. I want you to send one email a day to someone in your network you wouldn't otherwise have reached out to. In other words, not an email reply, not an email that you be sending to your co-founder because you do it every month anyway, but pick one person in your network that you've been meaning to reach out to. And one email a day. If you do that consistently every single workday, that's what, 260-ish plus new emails every single year. And I can practically guarantee that at least one of those, if not multiple of those emails, are going to lead to some sort of game-changing opportunity you wouldn't otherwise have experienced, all because you stay top of mind with the right people in your network. Hopefully that all makes sense, because I'm going to start wrapping things up now, and we'll take some Q&A. But the final thoughts I want to leave you with here is the thing that we get from people a lot is that what we teach at Mindmaven is common sense. We're not here to tell you that we need to rip the engine out of your car and totally rebuild it for you to be more productive, more efficient. Changes are well, we'll just take John Wooden's quote here. When you improve a little bit each day, eventually big things occur. Don't look for the big improvements. Seek the small improvements one day at a time. In other words, things like dictating emails, or sending one email a day, or using a task management tool, or there's a concept we teach called Whitespace time, which means carving out a consistent 4-hour block on your calendar every single week, Wednesdays from 12 to 4, that it's used solely for proactive, important work that you wouldn't otherwise get to. These small things that you do consistently every single day are what's going to make the big differences. So again, it doesn't take rocket science. It doesn't take game-changing new ideas you've never heard before. It's about taking the things that, frankly, a lot of you already know you should be doing anyway, and taking the systems behind it that you need to do it consistently and implementing that day in and day out. And you can do that solo if you're just a small team. You can do it with an EM. It obviously becomes easier. But at the end of the day, a lot of people chase the big, sexy changes that look really great on the outside, but big changes are hard to do consistently and often don't create the results a lot of people think that they do. And I'm not just making all of this up. We've been doing this collectively at Mindmaven, and the company's been around for I think 12 years now. I've been with the company 5, coming up on 6. We've done work with some incredible people at companies like Reddit, Thumbtack, Founder Collective. we've seen this stuff work over and over and over again. And in fact, as small as these changes are, we, in the last 2 or 3 years, had our clients start telling us, I feel like you gave me superpowers. And so we started to lean into that. And that's really what we say that we do now. We're in the business of giving CEOs superpowers, specifically the superpowers of leverage, intent, and fellowship. We've got those on the screen there. I think we've kind of covered all of them individually here, but leverage is saving time, intent is using your time well, and then fellowship is investing into and leveraging your relationships in a meaningful, consistent, a systematic way. And all of that ultimately allows you to build whatever your personal definition of true greatness is. Now, we're big fans of saying that, at least for most of us here at Mindmaven, true greatness is exceptional success without sacrificing the things in life that matter most, your relationships, your own mental health, your sanity, all of that. That's true greatness for us. That's what we use leverage, intent, and fellowship to create. But whatever your definition is perfect. So with that, I'm going to wrap things up. If this resonated with you and that you do kind of want to take a next step and learn more, I have 2 things that I'll just offer up. There's 2 links on the slide right now that you probably can't click, but you can type in, and we can send it out in the follow-up email. But first off, we're writing a book for the first time. We're taking our best practices and trying to make it more widely available to those who can't afford our coaching services, but do want to learn more. And we're doing an advanced reader program. In other words, you get free access to the book. All we ask for is feedback. So you'll get the first couple chapters, give them a read. There's some great information in there. And all we ask for is, what resonated, what didn't resonate. So if you want to sign up for that, you can follow that Advanced Reader link. And then we're also launching a course here in the very, very near future, in the coming months, that again, we're trying to take the core things that we teach to some of the larger, more unicorn type founders that we work with, and make them available to founders who are a little bit earlier on their journey, who aren't quite at that unicorn level yet, or haven't raised, tens of millions of dollars. And we're doing a cohort-based course, so a bunch of founders. You're going to work with another group of founders and grow and learn with them through one of our coaches, myself or our CEO, Patrick, or one of our other senior coaches, Shalise, who's incredible. And if that's interesting, you can follow that link to learn a little bit more about that. I think we're launching that in sometime in September. Thank you, by the way. Tage, I'm probably pronouncing your name wrong, and I apologize if that's the case, but those links are perfect. And with that, I am going to turn things over to Q&A. We've got a little bit of time for that left, and I see that we've got a bunch of questions in the Q&A box. So I'm going to leave this up on the screen so everyone can see those links and pull up this Q&A here. Regina, you're asking, when do you move from founder to CEO? And it's a very good question. I don't necessarily know that there's not a clear answer to that, where yesterday I was a founder, now I'm a CEO. It's more a transitional process as you begin to move out of independent contributor to the company and more into that, I'm building a team now, I'm scaling, I'm hiring people, and I'm spending more of my time managing relationships rather than building product, rather than being the one out there doing the sales and the marketing. I'd say it's a step-by-step process that happens the more steps back you take. And the one thing you want to avoid is being at the point where you should be a CEO. Now you've got this 30-person team, but you're still the one mainly building the product. You're still the one mainly running sales or marketing. That's when you're a founder, that when you should be a CEO. I hope that helps. All right, what else do we have in here? Knowing that saying no is a protective practice for ourselves. This is Adam, I'm looking at yours. How can we ask of others in better ways so we're cognizant of their time, but still working toward getting what we want? That is a great question. So how do you, knowing that others should be protecting their time, how do you ask for what you want? I would say there's a little bit you can take away from this art of no conversation that I just brought up, where you might remember I said, ask them to answer the top 3 questions they have and come to you with those answers. So if you wanted to reach out in the situation, say you were on the other side, you wanted to reach out to someone to pick their brain, what it might be is, rather than saying, hey, can I pick your brain for 30 minutes over coffee? You say, hey, your story really inspired me, something personal. Don't do a mass email approach for 50 CEOs just to see who gets back to you. We make it personal to each person, have a custom comment in there, and then say something along the lines of, I want to be respectful of your time, but your stories really inspired me. These are here's the one thing I'm really struggling with right now, or the 1 or 2 big questions I have. And if you would be open to just writing me a quick email back or doing a quick video or audio recording answering these questions, it would mean the world to me. So you ask in a way where you're not asking for 30 minutes of their time, 60 minutes of their time. You're asking for them to do a 5-minute recording, which frankly is going to get you just as much value. You don't need the 30 to 60 minute coffee time with this person. And if they do respond to that, if they take you up on that and they do send you a video or audio recording, one, of course, reach out to them and say, thank you for this. And ideally, set some sort of reminder for yourself. Ideally, this is something an EM would do for you, but you do it yourself to follow up with them in 3 months, 6 months, and let them know how you implemented what it is that they taught you. So, hey, I don't know if you remember me, but I asked this question 6 months back. You were courteous enough to give this answer. I just want to let you know I've implemented that. Here's the change it made in me or my business. I just wanted to say thank you. And that's how you can build relationships in a way where if you send them a future email, they're very, very likely to want to respond to you because they see that you appreciate it. They see that you do the work up front. I hope that answers your question. Let's see how we doing. We're doing okay. Deval says, thanks for the talk. You are very welcome. What are your thoughts on multitasking? I'm a big believer that really multitasking doesn't exist. There's some people who can do 2 things fairly well, or even 3 things fairly well, but not as well as they would do one of those things that was their sole focus. So I'm a big fan of things like I talked about Whitespace time very briefly, where if you have proactive work, important work that if you don't carve out time for, you're not going to make it happen. Find a recurring 4-hour block on your calendar. Again, Wednesdays from 12 to 4, whatever. Place that block recurring on your calendar, protect it as the most important time on your calendar, and dedicate blocks of time to specific projects. Don't use 30 minutes to work on this and then 20 minutes to work on this, then you switch back to the other project for another 30 minutes. Try and push projects through to completion, or at least until burnout's not quite the right word, but there are some projects that you just can't work on from beginning to end straight. So that's my thoughts on multitasking. Avoid it as much as you can, because even the best multitaskers pay a switching cost as you jump back and forth between context. What else do we have here? Let's see. We've got another couple minutes of Q&A. I probably will not have a chance to get through all of these. But let me pick some ones that I definitely can do. So this is anonymous, but they're asking for my favorite books related to productivity, scaling yourself as a founder. Well, at the risk of a shameless plug, I'm a big fan of the book we're writing, and you can get free access with that advanced reader program. So I checked that one out. Beyond that, though, the whole idea of like now and next, which I talked about very briefly, is heavily inspired by David Allen's Getting Things Done. It's a classic productivity book, but the issue a lot of people have, especially earlier stage founders that we run into, is they get so excited about learning the next new thing. It's okay, I finish this book, what do I read next? I finish this book, what do I read next? And it's good to have that desire to learn, but it often comes at the expense of execution. So I would rather than picking up another book, right after this call, I would rather you pick one thing. If something resonated on this talk, pick one thing that resonated, focus on implementing that for a little while, turn it into a habit rather than trying to find 40 habits that you want to put into place at once. It's not going to work. It's going to break. It's going to fall apart. So by all means, look for new books, find courses, programs, whatever. But don't get so caught up in learning that you forget to execute. All right. What else do we have here? Let's do a relationship-focused one. So in terms of relationship management, what are the best ways to organize our existing contacts across social networks and put their names into buckets? That is a great question, and one that I wish I could talk about at length here, but I know we're running out of time. Here's the quick answer, though. You cannot boil the ocean. In other words, if you have a network of hundreds or as you grow thousands of people, you cannot manage relationships with all of them in a meaningful way. So what is much more effective is to leverage the 80-20 rule that a lot of you have probably heard about. It's true in many areas of life, and especially true in relationships, where 80% of the opportunities you want to hear about are going to come from 20% of your network. And what you need to do is figure out what that 20% is, who are these people, and invest into those relationships rather than trying to do all of your relationships. And the exercise you can do to make this a little bit easier on yourself is start by asking yourself, what opportunities do I want from my network? In other words, if you could snap your fingers and have your network start sending you one thing or 2 things, what would those be? So figure out what the opportunities are that you want, and then ask yourself, okay, what groups of people in my network have the most access to these types of opportunities? So for example, if you wanted, say, fundraising, you're at the stage where you think you need to start raising money, then you might identify current investors as a group. You might identify other founders as a group that are likely to hear about fundraising opportunities. And once you've identified the groups, then ask yourself, okay, who are the specific people within these groups that have the greatest access to these types of opportunities. So ideally, who has sent me these types of opportunities before? Or at the very least, if I were to build the right relationships with these people, who would send them my way? So start by asking yourself, what opportunities do I want? What groups of people have access to those opportunities? And then who are the specific people within these groups that if I build relationships with them, I'm going to generate more of the opportunities that I'm looking for. All right. And I know we are just about out of time here. What do we think? Do we have time for one more? Let me see. Let's do. Okay, one more relationship one here. I'm a big fan of this one. Research says that weak ties, we actually have a presentation on this. It's funny they bring it up, but weak ties or weaker, more distant relationships are the best source of opportunities. How do you apply the maintain Mindshare strategies and tactics with a huge group of weak ties? So what I just walked you through, this idea of opportunities, groups, people, that's to identify your list of what we would call legends. And legends are essentially the top of your network. These are the people who have a proven ability and willing to send you opportunities. But you're right, there is a lot of truth to the strength of weak ties. What we need in that case is a separate group of people that you're in touch with a little bit less often. So your legends, the people who we identified as the most relevant, they should be getting some sort of interaction from you once every 45 days at absolute most, some sort of meaningful, relevant, valuable interaction. If we take a step back at some of these weaker ties, people you don't have that strong relationship with already, they should still be hearing from you. But again, you can't boil the ocean. You can't deliver meaningful, relevant experiences to everyone. So identify another group of people that we would typically call your legends. Your legends are going to hear from you your champions. Your champions are going to hear from you every 90 days, give or take. And they're often a little bit more templatized, the outreach. You can bucket these people to say, okay, out of my champions, I have people who are investors, who are other founders, and who are, other NASDAQ CEOs. And try and find broad topics that are relevant to those groups of people. Like other founders are probably very, very interested in things like productivity. If you can come up with a rough email template that you can customize, that's, hey, I've got this amazing tool I use called Asana. I know productivity is something a lot of people struggle with. I definitely struggle with it. I just wanted to share it with you. No pressure. You don't have to respond to this. I just wanted to drop a line and I figured you might appreciate this. And you take a slightly more templatized, less personalized approach. You're investing less time into these weaker ties until they become that legend, until they have that proven ability and willingness. And then you start investing into them a little bit more. I hope that answers your question. And that, I think, is probably going to be our most natural stopping point. I know there are a number of questions here still. What I will do, I will find a way to make sure that we get these answers out to everyone. I do want to make sure that you walk away from this, but I think I should hand things back probably to Colin here to wrap things up. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Connor. That was very helpful. If we were in a live audience and asked everyone to raise their hand whether or not that they are going to save time and be more productive as they scale their companies. Now, everyone's saying thank you in the chat. So Connor, thank you so much for sharing this, and we'll follow up with additional resources. We've got some great programs on the horizon, so don't forget to sign up for those if you're interested in learning some more from our experts. From all of us at the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center, we appreciate you all for joining us. Hopefully this helped, and we look forward to seeing you next time.